Before we get started, I'm going to forget this, I don't think it's in you. We have friends that work at the Adventist Heritage Center. You know, we have a orchestra string program here where kids can learn to play in orchestras. There are lots of talented music violin. So Augusta is hitting the fiddle and bluegrass style in a perfect program. It'd be nice if we could get, they're limiting the numbers of well, 6 o'clock, we want to start right on time. We'd like to start with word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for your blessings. I thank you for this thank you. All right. Would you, Gary, would you go talk? Here for that staple in there was cooking me. Oh, what? Well, I'm not Jamie Buckland. She's looking over because he had an emergency and called her. Emailed me this afternoon about 2 o'clock. So don't worry, I'll send you my presentation that she did 12 days ago on video. I know a lot of the stuff that she's presenting, so we'll get you the information you need. So just in background, I've listened to hers. A lot of people still don't know about the Hope Scholarship, but it's a real blessing. Our school has checked it out pretty carefully because our school functions on tuition dollars and donations. We don't want to take any government money that might affect how we operate. We don't want anyone telling us, well, you can't teach this, or you can't, or you have to hire this person, or whatever it might be. We think we know we want to operate independently as a Christian school. So that's really important to us. So when this first started being talked about, we checked it out really carefully. And our legislature put so many safeguards into this program that the dollars, it's an educational savings account that almost didn't go through. You know, last year it was challenged in court, if you've been following it at all. And there were some people that thought all the money needed to stay in the public school system. And Jamie will tell you on here, the public school gets their funding from 3 sources. They're federal, state and local funds. The Hope Scholarship doesn't bother their federal or their local funds. It's only state funds that are affected. So they still receive funding for all of our kids, whether or not they are enrolled there. But this program is peeling off some state dollars so that kids can have a choice, because, you know, our state has struggled with academic things. We'll just leave it at that. And so there are legislators that feel that, well, let's give them some options. Maybe parents can find things that fit with their kids a little better. And that's what this legislation was intended to do. And so as a school, looking at it, it has safeguards in there that we do not have to, accepting a student with Hope dollars coming with them doesn't require us to change anything we teach, anything about the students we accept, anything about the faculty we hire. It's still a totally Christian-run program without any strings. And the money is actually the Hope Scholars money. They just bring it as a tuition scholarship to our building when they come. So, so that's kind of the background. The Hope Scholarship itself is something that will provide dollars, and she'll stress this too, for kids to use in private school, enrolling in a private school for their tuition, for homeschool costs, for tutoring, and there are other things, other kinds of schools that might be available. We don't tend to have many of those around our area. We have several Christian schools. And so the scholarship will provide funding to help with the tuition, and it'll go into an account that belongs to the family. And then when the school bills the state, then that money will come into the school to pay for their tuition, or the portion of it that it covers. So with that background, we think this is going to be a wonderful program, and we hope it continues for a long time. I know other states around us have similar things that have kept on for quite a few years. So we're very thankful to our legislature for having the insight and the foresight to do this. But right now, we're going to introduce you to Jamie Buckland online, and this is a presentation she did, I think, 12 days ago. And it gives an overview of the whole thing statewide, of the educational options. You know, Highland Adventist School, we'd like to collect you all in here, but you need to find the option for your child that works the best. And so she's going to talk a little bit about some of the options that are available that this scholarship program opens up. And then she'll take some other questions, and I'll direct you through the stuff that we just gave you and to some websites that will help you as you look at this for your family. So I think we're ready, Barry. Probably.
All right, good morning. I'm Jamie Buckland with the West Virginia Pew Families United for Education. We are here at the Kanawha County Public Library, and we're going to talk about K-12 school options here in West Virginia. I am the founder of the West Virginia Pew Families United for Education, and we exist to remove boundaries, guide parents, support providers through the transformation of K-12 education in the Mountain State. So just a little bit of background on my work. I am the Executive Director and Headmistress at Appalachian Classical Academy that is in Raleigh County. Before there were learning pods and micro schools many years ago, within 10 to 15 years ago, we were doing these hybrid homeschool programs where we bring our homeschool children together and school alongside one another. And so we launched ACA in 2016. It's a one-day-a-week homeschool hybrid, and we have about 13 families that we work together, but we had to learn a lot in order to get that off the ground. Where are we going to meet? Are we going to compensate? Hey, Easton. Elsie, can you let Easton know, like, just to maybe not shout? I've got my kiddos with me today. But to get it off the ground, it was where are we going to meet, and how are we going to charge people, and how are we going to compensate our tutors, and insurance needs, like how do we make sure that we're protected and we're not assuming all of this liability. So learned a lot in launching that. A couple of years after that, I was asked to serve as the legislative liaison for REACH, which is a support group for homeschoolers. And when we surveyed our homeschoolers there in Southern West Virginia, the number one thing that they said they wanted at that time, this was in 2019, was sports access through the WVSSAC. And so I voluntarily lobbied that year in 2020, and we were able to pass a sports access bill for homeschoolers. And a fun fact, this morning last night and this morning, ran into a couple families here in Charleston who had attended Homeschool Day at the Capitol yesterday, and their student athletes were there to meet with lawmakers and thank them for passing that legislation a couple years ago, and to talk about expanding their opportunity, because it is still kind of limited. It's not ideal, but it's always exciting to see student athletes that are benefiting from that work. So I served as the legislative liaison a couple years, and that got me involved in the legislature and talking to lawmakers, and all that kind of came together with the passage of Hope Scholarship, and I founded the West Virginia Pew again to remove barriers, guide parents, and support providers. One thing that we recognized about a year ago when I picked up this work full time was that to really understand school options in West Virginia, you have to have a grasp on compulsory education. And so a lot of people do not understand compulsory education, what that means, how that works, and states vary, but in West Virginia, the state basically says when a child is going to be 6 by July 1st, not on July 1st, so that's a key fact, but when they're going to be 6 by July 1st, then they are required to go to full-time school, in person or virtual, but they are required for compulsory education to be enrolled in full-time school. So the one option is traditional public in-person. Of course, virtual was added in 2017. The state only requires counties to offer virtual in 6th through 12th grades. So they don't actually require counties to offer virtual school for K through 5th grade. So you have a lot of families right now looking for virtual options, and they'll say, well, my county doesn't offer elementary. Can they do that? And the reality is, yes, they're within their authority to not offer a virtual option in K through 5. We have 2 counties that I know of who do. Upshur County and Logan County do have an elementary virtual option. And of course, again, the compulsory education, age 6 before July 1st, up through 17 is when the state requires a child to be enrolled in school. So in order, if you don't want to go to school, if you don't want to be enrolled full-time in public school, then you need to be exempt from it. And there are a handful of exemptions that allow you to be exempt from full-time compulsory education. And the most popular is private school. There are exemption B schools and there are exemption K schools. Exemption B schools have an agreement with their county, and exemption K schools are registered with the state. We will drop a link to these handouts in the comments of the live stream, so that if you actually want to go in and look at the code, a lot of people are looking to start school, so you'll be able to go in and look at the code on what is required. Just over 150 private schools throughout the state of West Virginia. We still do have 12 counties in the state that do not have a private school. So the need for alternative education is great, and we want to continue to support providers to manage the supply for that. The average tuition of private school in West Virginia is just over $6,000 for elementary and just under $7,000 for high school. We get a lot of questions again about athletics, like I was talking about for the homeschoolers and the SSAC. So for private schools, they have actually 3 conferences, WVCEA, WVCAT, and the WVSSAC. A lot of people want to understand, like, if my kid is enrolled in this private school, will they have access to WVSSAC? The SSAC is a member school organization, meaning a public school is a member of their organization, but private schools can also be member schools of the SSAC. So it gets very nuanced and tricky, like if the private school doesn't go up through high school, they can co-op with their local public school if they don't have enough kids to run a program. It gets very nuanced, so if people have questions about that, happy to answer that on the side. But CEA and CAT are private conferences that schools can join in order to compete in their programs. The next most popular exemption has traditionally been the homeschool exemption, and that's exemption C. And there are 2 ways for you to satisfy the law if you want to be exempt from compulsory education as a homeschooler. You can request that the superintendent approve your request to homeschool. I don't know if anybody has ever done that. Or you can submit the NOI, the notification, and you basically say, hey, I want my child to be exempt from compulsory attendance. I'm going to homeschool them. I agree to educate them or instruct them in the 5 required subjects and assess them in those subjects. And so you're agreeing to satisfy the criteria under that homeschool exemption in order to keep your child from having to attend full-time school. Another way to satisfy compulsory attendance is through charter schools, and that was launched passed in 2021 and passed in 2020, I believe, and then the authorizing board got passed in 2021, and in 2022 we saw the first 2 brick and mortar charters open and 2 virtual charters. Our state does limit virtual charters to just 2, so a lot of people are looking at these new virtual charter options and wanting to know, can we bring those into West Virginia? Right now, legally, we can only have 2 virtual charters, and those are already contracted. There is the Virtual Preparatory Academy and then West Virginia Virtual Academy, and those are our 2 virtual options. If you're looking for a virtual enrollment right now, there is only one that I know of that is taking virtual enrollment right now, and that is the Virtual Preparatory Academy. Again, we'll drop a link to that in the comments. They are currently enrolling students from kindergarten through 10th grade, but there are some deadlines attached to that. So if you are looking to enroll in virtual school right now that will satisfy compulsory attendance, that is a public school, it will qualify your child for the Hope Scholarship. There is that one option through Virtual Preparatory Academy. What I used to say this was the newest, but then after micro school learning pods passed last year, it's no longer the newest exemption. But one of the exemptions that's growing in popularity is the Hope Scholarship exemption. That's exemption M as in Mary. It's an ESA program that will allow parents and families to utilize the state portion of their education funding to tailor an individualized learning experience that works best for them. A lot of our families in West Virginia that are looking at the Hope Scholarship as an option want to know what qualifies their child to be eligible. You need to be a West Virginia resident, first of all. So I was talking with a couple of people last weekend in Morgantown, and they were saying that they had heard people from outside of the state were applying. He's fine. I deal with this every day. It's fine. He's 6 and has been traveling with mom for the last 24 hours, so he's in a mood. But a lot of people trying to apply from outside of the state, and they will not qualify because you do have to have a proof of residency, and so you do have to be a West Virginia resident. And then the student is eligible or required to be enrolled into kindergarten. So this does get a little tricky in that when a child is 5, by July 1st, again, last year we had students turning 5 on July 1st, and they were not eligible. They had to actually get early entrance, an early entrance exam in order to be eligible. So they need to turn 5 by July 1st, and if they have done that, then they are eligible to apply as a first-year kindergartner. But again, they could also, if they've not had a private kindergarten year, so they haven't been homeschooled, they haven't been enrolled in private school, so they're still eligible to enroll in kindergarten because they're 6 on July 1st, because they didn't have to go because of compulsory law. They weren't 6 years old yet. Then they are also eligible. So 5 or 6 without a private year are eligible for the Hope Scholarship. If they turn 5 there shortly after that window, then they will need to take an early entrance exam. And once they have passed that and shown that their kid is ready for kindergarten, then they can apply. The second way is the student was enrolled full-time in a public elementary or secondary school program in the state the previous year. Basically meaning if you've been in public school, whether public, traditional, or charter, that this entire year, then you're going to be eligible that March 1st through May 15th window. Lastly, the student is enrolled full-time and attending a public elementary or secondary school program in the state for at least 45 days during an instructional term at the time of application, and those are 45 consecutive calendar days. A lot of people want to know, like, when can you apply? So right now, students who weren't eligible before July 6th, and again, all of this is on hopescholarshipwv.com. You can go to their website to get this information. But if your student wasn't eligible before July 6th, but they have since become eligible, meaning basically they enrolled in school, they hit their 45 consecutive calendar days, so now they are eligible. They can send a request, and that's on the website. They can submit the request for the link to apply, and they can be eligible for this current 22-23 academic year. So they will get a prorated amount of funding for this year. This is a little tricky. If they were not eligible before July 6th, and they become eligible, then they can get it for this current year. They do not have to wait until March 1st. So if they've served their 45 consecutive calendar days at any time leading up to March 1st, they submit that request for an application. The amazing team at the Treasurer's Office then sends that over to the Department of Education that verifies and confirms that they were enrolled and attending. You can't miss that more than 10% of your 45 consecutive calendar days. So they confirm that they were enrolled, they confirm that they attended, and then they come back and issue a link to the parent or guardian to apply for the child. So that's if they weren't eligible before July 6th. If they were, so if they were enrolled in public school last year, or they were an eligible kindergartner last year, and so they were eligible this past application season, and they just didn't take advantage of it, then they are not eligible to apply right now. And they will need to wait until the March 1st window through May 15th. And when they apply, when eligible students apply and are awarded the scholarship, it's going to be for next year, for 23-24, not for the current 22-23. How much money will be placed in the student's account? Again, if they're newly eligible and they enter in this year, it's going to be a prorated amount. It's not going to be the full amount, but the full amount is roughly $4,600. That can fluctuate each year. This year, $4,298.60 was the full amount, and then the state is allowed to take 5% for the administrative fee to make sure that the program is implemented. There are two pathways to use the Hope Scholarship program. One is to enroll back into a non-public school. So that could be a B or K school in the state of West Virginia, or it could be a non-public school or public school. Some public schools charge tuition. I'm not the expert on that. I've just heard of that in other states. But you can use that to enroll in a non-public school in West Virginia or outside of West Virginia. And once you're enrolled in school, then you're going to satisfy whatever requirements they have for attendance and whatever requirements they have for assessments. Are we good? Okay. The other option, and the ones for micro schools, for learning pods, for those that are educating at home, for those that are doing an online private school, that all falls under the IIP, the Individualized Instructional Program. So you're only choosing an actual non-public school if it is a recognized school in the eyes of the state that it's operating in. Then it would be the private school. Everything else falls under IIP. Learning pod, micro school, educated home, everything else falls under that IIP. So what is required of the student under the IIP? The Hope Scholar option, the Individualized Instructional Program. They need to be assessed in reading, language, math, science, and social studies every year. So they need to be instructed in those 5 subjects and assessed in those 5 subjects every year. They need to be assessed by nationally normed standardized achievement tests with scores within or above 4th Stay 9. If it falls below the 4th Stay 9, they need to show improvement from the previous year's results. Or they need to be assessed by a portfolio review conducted by a certified teacher. Doesn't have to be a West Virginia teacher, but a certified teacher, in which the teacher determines that the student is making academic progress commensurate with his or her age and ability. So portfolio review or a standardized test. For the assessment piece, you're going to submit that to the county by June 8th. If you do the portfolio review or the standardized test, it must be submitted to the county by June 8th. and then they send it on to the Department of Education by June 15th. The qualifying expenses are listed. The parent handbook has been updated. The provider handbook has been updated. So you can find all of the uses that you can use the Hope Scholarship funds for in those resources. They defined curriculum, it means a complete course of study for a particular content area or grade level, including any supplemental materials required by the curriculum. So a lot of people ask, does my curriculum have to be approved by the state? And the reality is it does not have to be approved by the state. So you're not submitting curriculum to the government for them to confirm that it meets some type of criteria in order to educate your child. You're choosing your curriculum. If the provider that you want to use is not an authorized vendor for My Scholarship or Hope Scholarship, then you can't use Hope funds for it. So it does need to, they do need to be an authorized vendor in order for you to purchase it and use your Hope funds on it, so you can work with them to get them set up and involved in the program. There's a lot of concern from providers in regards to what would have to be required of them in order to be an authorized provider. And so these statutes within the code really offer freedom and protection to providers. So I will actually go through these. Education service providers shall be given maximum freedom to provide for the educational needs of Hope Scholarship students without governmental control. A participating school or education service provider is not required to alter its creed, practices, admission policy, or curriculum in order to accept eligible recipients whose parents pay tuition or fees from a Hope Scholarship account pursuant to this article. Lastly, this article does not expand the regulatory authority of the state, its officers, or any school district to impose any additional regulation of education service providers beyond those necessary to enforce the requirements of the program. So this actually offers protection to providers and limits the government from being able to come in and add additional requirements in. Step Up for Students is the contracted vendor that is helping to implement the Hope Scholarship program. They are the ones receiving the applications. They are the ones that are working with providers to get them signed up. So Step Up for Students is the program manager and oversees the application and provider portal. You'll hear us talk about Emma, the EMA, Education Market Assistant, and it's the portal for parents and providers. The easiest way to think, at least in my opinion, about providers that can take Hope funds is to break them down into three buckets: non-public schools. And so non-public schools are the ones that will have a specific link sent to them in order to become a provider and enroll students. So non-public schools are one bucket. And then education service providers, that is all of your tutors, your therapy services, anybody that's offering an actual service is going to fall under education service providers. Micro schools fall under education service providers. Right now, learning pods are not an authorized provider. It's not a qualified expense right now for learning pods, but for micro schools, for tutorials, for online schools, all of that would fall under the education service provider, and you can create an account at hopescholarshipwd.com where it says click here to log in. You can create a provider account there and add your location and add your services and get set up there to accept Hope funds. Lastly, if you have a product or you are a supplier and you've got curriculum or materials, you can go through My Scholarship. They have a new survey out right now that you can complete that and become a vendor to have your products qualified. A lot of folks ask us, why are we currently not eligible if we're in private school or we are homeschooled? And so there are two House bills right now that both have been introduced that would open up the Hope Scholarship Program, 2619 and 2997. It would open it up to include, it would basically remove that 45 consecutive calendar day requirement from public school, and it would open up the Hope Scholarship Program so that currently students who are under those exemptions that we talked about earlier, under a private school exemption or under a homeschooled exemption, would be eligible to apply for the Hope Scholarship. But we need to keep in mind it was written and passed to expand school choice and to provide options for families who may not be able to afford them without it. You also need to understand the revenue of public education. There are 3 revenue streams for public schools: federal, local, state. Federal and local go into the district whether the student is enrolled or not. So the Buckland children who have not been enrolled in public school since Ethan, my eldest, who's 22, was enrolled in public pre-K and kindergarten. Then we homeschooled first grade on up. So our district never received the state portion of funding for my children, but they always received the federal and the local funding. Federal is basically because your child exists, there's federal funding that goes in there. And then for the local funding, it is just because of property tax or real estate tax, it's going in there. But the state portion is attached to the child being enrolled. And so for the state portion, all of these, we estimate about 30,000 students are currently under exemption B, K, or C. And so those 30,000 children do not have the state portion being funded into their districts. So if we were to open it up, we would now, the state would need to come up with that money in order to fund the Hope Scholarship. Whereas for students who are leaving public school or coming up into kindergarten, that state portion has already been designated to that student. So there's a kind of a gap when it comes to the financial responsibility. Had this legislation attempted to pass with every child eligible from the start, the state would have had to come up with an estimated $117 million instead of an estimated $24 million, which was anticipated for the initial launch. There is no cap on the Hope Scholarship, but there is this trigger. If on July 1st of 2024, the total number of Hope applicants plus Hope participants does not exceed 5% of the total eligible student body, all will be eligible on July 1st of 2026. So we estimate roughly 12,000 students in July of 2024. So basically July 1st of 2024, if we don't have more than roughly 12,000 students using Hope or having applied for it, then in July of 2026, everybody would then apply. It's a little bit backwards, because if you look at school choice legislation in other states, it's always like, well, if the demand is there, then we'll open it up. But this is kind of backwards. It's like, well, if we haven't hit that, then we'll open it up. So it's interesting the way that it worked out. So is there a cap? No. Is there a limit on household income for eligibility? No. And is this just for students with special needs? No, it is not. And I will say that, again, all this information, for the most part, as far as Hope Scholarship, you can find all this on hopescholarshipwd.com. You're welcome to email them for questions, and I'll get that email address wrong if I just quote it, so we'll drop it into the comments. They've got a help desk line, and the EMA portal also has an email address and a phone number, so we'll put all of that into the comments. If you have questions about compulsory education or other exemptions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at jamie@wvfue.org. And that wraps it up for today's workshop.
She talks fast, doesn't she? Yeah, so I've tried to give you the, if you're like me and you hear all that and you take it in, I need to go back and look at some things. So I wanted you to look at the packet I gave you. Did everyone get one? I think, except for the teachers didn't. Yeah, we'll start from the back, because that's where the Hope Scholarship information is. I'll tell you about some of the rest of the stuff later, but there should be, well, yep. Should have a page, has some blue on it, says Hope Scholarship. So this is kind of a summary of what she's talking about. She didn't stress a lot, but apparently that application window is really important. So as I understand it, if you apply for a Hope Scholarship between March 1 and May 15, you're guaranteed of receiving it if you meet the criteria, if your student meets the criteria. After May 15, they will still award some scholarships, but it's a case by case. They're going to see, you know, how many they have and so on. I'm not sure why the window if everyone's qualified, but that's what they tell us, that you need to make sure and apply by that time. And I put in there a copy of if your child has been in the public school system, they should have a student number that you'll need the WVEIS ID number. It would come out on your grade reports and so on. So you'll need to have a number. For entering kindergartners, they have to work with the county office to get a number. So you have to ask the county office to issue you a WVEIS ID number, because that has to be part of the application. And then in here I've given you a sample, and this comes right off the Hope Scholarship website, a sample of a notice of intent, and this has to be filed with your local county board of education. And I think there's a deadline on there. I just do it as soon as I could. I don't see the deadline on there, but I know there is one. And so looking back at the one that said Hope, so the current criteria, student must be living in the state, must be entering kindergarten for the upcoming year, age 5 by July 1st, or currently enrolled in a West Virginia public school, and it has to have been for at least 45 days. I hadn't heard until I heard this presentation that there is legislation that's been presented to try and open it up to all of our kids. It's been a tough thing for us to think, you know, that's going to be hard for all of our kids, but we're going to try and make it doable for the kids that we have already that don't have these funds yet. So anyway, those of you that are sitting here that have kids, we'll work it with you. So the notice of intent has to go to the county BOE, during the window time, March 1st through May 15. You have to get that number from the county board office. And once you have that information, then you can complete the Hope application form. And I'll walk you through their website here in just a minute. And then you submit the application to them and wait for approval. So it's, you know, it's pretty simple process, but they've been adding steps, so it's confusing at first, but it actually is a fairly simple process. And you should know that every year you don't have to go through a qualifying process, but you do have to reapply every year. Make sure and don't miss those deadlines, because that's important. But from what we understand, as long as this legislation stays in effect, which we hope is a long time, students from kindergarten through grade 12 are covered. It's going to be just walk with them all the way through school. So it will be a great resource. And I appreciate the work our public schools put in, and the things that the teachers there do to try and meet the needs of our students. But there are some students that do better in a smaller setting, do better, and their parents want a Christian environment for them. There are many reasons why someone might seek out another school. I gave you, this was about Hope Scholarship, but I have the bully pulpit here, so I gave you some information about our school, because we hope you'll consider our school when you're thinking about this. And you saw all the options that are available. The easiest one for a parent to manage is just enrolling in a non-public school like ours, because we do all the testing with the kids. We already have the pathways of communicating with the state, and so we send the testing off, and we don't have to do portfolios and all those sorts of things. It's already an established program. And regarding Highland Adventist School, it's an outstanding program that's been here since 1988. Our teachers are college-trained, certified teachers who know what they're doing, and I really appreciate working with this team. We have students all over the country that have been successful based on the foundation they found here, or they received here. So you can read, there's a lot of information here about testing that's been done on our curriculum, and it's a Christian school program, and our teachers are Christians, and I think you would find a good home here for your children. I will tell you that our tuition for next year will almost be covered by Hope if they're at the rates, inflation keeps hitting. We had an inflation increase in salaries and everything this year, so it's a challenge. I think Hope will also be increased with tuition or with inflation. And if there will be a small amount above the Hope Scholarship that will be due. If a family has trouble with that, we actually have work study at our school that could help you with some of those costs too. Do you have any questions None? We have in the mid-20s. We can handle up to, well, we've had 60 here before. That's a lot. We like in the 50s, so we could double our size here this year. Barry, if you could pull up the Hope Scholarship website. Yeah, and we do go pre-K through 12. Oh, and I have one pre-K student that I'd been talking to about if you've had your kid in a private pre-K, from what we understand, that doesn't count against them. You know, if they're coming from private school in K through 12, they can't get the scholarship. If they've been a private pre-K, they can still apply when they hit kindergarten age. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a little look at their website. So we could accompany it. So this is their portal. If you just Google West Virginia Hope Scholarship, you can go here. And you can see, if you can click on the helpful videos, Barry. Yeah, so they have things for schools. We're in, yeah. Okay, upper left. We'll scroll back up if you would. Yeah, there's a whole section there for parents. And it's by the EMA, the educational, that organization that helps us with the funding and so on. Apparently the money, once you're approved, the money is set aside in an account for your family, and then the school has to bill the state to access that money. So when you enroll, then that process can be set up. So there's helpful information here. There's a FAQ, frequently asked questions, if you want to go there, Barry. No, up at the top. Over. Right there, yeah. So there are a lot of questions there that maybe you have, but a lot of them were answered on this presentation about who's qualified and how that all works. But I have a printout of that if you want to look at that. But so you guys, you understood her well enough and you got the idea of what's going on. All right, so the deadlines are the big thing. And I would encourage you, if you want more information about our school, by the way, please be in touch, because I'm the principal. I'm Cheryl Jacko. I didn't tell you, I guess, who I was. Our teachers are all here. And so we really would be honored if you'd approach us about serving your children next year. We do have an application process. It's done online. And you have to have references that go through our admission committee. We don't accept every student. And I just say that not as a negative, but I see that as a positive. We don't accept every student. And so we try and have a student body that we kind of put together ourselves to be the kind of kids that we think our kids would like to hang out with, you know. So that process, and that's described in here. Let's see, I think it's maybe the second or third page. Tells you how to go about it. You go to our website, and there's an admissions link there. And yeah, steps to enroll at Highland Adventist School. And so that whole process is right there, and walks you step by step through that. Also, on the brochure that we gave you at the attached, there's our web address is there, as well as our email address. And so if you have questions, you can email, and those come to me. I'll be glad to answer any that you might have, or you can call. We have an answering service because I'm out and about. So you just leave a message with our answering service, and I call you right back. So yeah, here's our website in case you're, there's, just so you know what we're looking at, that we do a lot of outdoor skills things. There was a bird banding picture. That's one of our groups going biking up from Thomas down to Parsons, some of our graduates. We have a lot of fun, a lot of field trips at our school, a lot of outdoor, there's our Christmas play this year. A lot of outdoor activities. We try and plan one outdoor skills event each month. That was our caving that we did in October, I think, the Bowden Cave. Yeah, we do promote a school past high school. That was an assembly we had where our teachers told all about their college experience and encouraged our students to keep going past 12th grade. whether it's a certificate or a college degree, you need to have something past high school. Another outdoor skills from this year, we went up to Blackwater. We have an orchestra, and our kids do great. It's a string orchestra. Violins, violas, bass, and cello. We have a youth club called Pathfinders and Adventures. It's like a co-educational Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts where they earn honors. We have a lot of good friends. Wonderful kids. So anyway, that's all on our website. Our kids all wrote books. So anyway, the thing that we like is our teachers do project-based learning, and so they don't just sit and do workbooks. They do a lot of different kinds of things to accomplish the goal of learning, and we think it goes pretty well. So anyway, any other questions? Well, I'm so glad you guys came. I'll hang around if you have any questions you want to ask me privately. If you decide you would like to enroll, I'd suggest doing that soon. We do have a cap on how many we'll take, and I've already started to have applications come in. So we appreciate you coming so much. Let's see, we ought to have a closing word of prayer. I was going to call on somebody, but I'll go ahead. I didn't give them a heads up. Dear Father, I thank you so much for your blessings. I thank you again for this opportunity given us here in West Virginia. I thank you for each one that's come out this evening. And Lord, whatever our decisions for our kids, we know that you care about our children. I pray that you'll bless us, that you'll help us find just the right situation for our kids to be successful, but most of all, draw closer to you. That's our most important goal, is that they be good, solid Christian citizens of our community. And we thank you for your love and pray you'll go with us as we go home. In Jesus' name, amen.